Heat check. Basketball, college. Basketball, college. Oh, that's time already? Whoa.
Welcome into another episode of the Heat Check Hangout, your number one source for all things basketball, college. I'm your host, Brian Ralph, joined as always my co-hosts, Connor Hope and Riley Davis, here to break down some foreign tours, and we have a fun draft planned. I know our Final Four draft that we do every year is one of our more well-received episodes. That's been a lot of fun the last 2 years. Today we're kicking off draft season. We're going to be drafting All-Americans. We're each going to pick teams of 6. Can pick whoever you want as long as you have one mid-major player on that team, which we were joking before. Means 3 FAU players are probably going to get picked because they qualify. But we'll get to that. We have some foreign tours takeaway as well. Foreign tour takeaways, excuse me. I can't talk this early. But first thing we want to get into are just some tales from the Almanac. If you have not heard, Almanac Volume 2 pre-orders are available. That is coming out on September 20th. You have between now and then to get your pre-order in, and you will get the Almanac for a 20% discount. Pre-order discount we have it for you. It is we're a little bit biased, but it is the most comprehensive college basketball preview you will find anywhere. 600,000 words total. A little bit over that, I think, is what last year's came out to. We go really in depth on all 362 now teams in the country. We talked to every single head coach in the country. We're doing that along with 3-man weave, along with Field 68, along with verbal commits. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. Got and talked to a lot of coaches, and there's, every time you go through this and you dive deep into a handful of teams, I think we're all responsible for about 20 or 30 teams, right? At least. You get some fun stuff out of it. Riley, I know we were chatting before. What are just some takeaways as you're going through this, coaches you've talked to or teams you've already written? What are some takeaways you got? What's a good story you have?
Yeah. Well, for one, I expanded my reach this year and covered some Big Sky teams moving west. Shout out to our West Coast fans. I know Razir Bolton enthusiast is an avid listener. Shout out to the Gonzaga folks who Connor brings in. So that was kind of fun because last year I just did the Big South and the MEAC, so it was fun to cover teams over a wider span of the country. And there's a lot of cool coaches in the Big Sky. I think Steve Smiley at Northern Colorado was one of my favorite interviews. He's in his early 40s, really easy to talk to, really easy to connect with. I also left super impressed with David Patrick, who's at Sacramento State, and I think his vision is really good for that program. They played a little bit slower this past year than he preferred. I think they were in the 350s in tempo because they had a big man, Callum McRae, who wasn't necessarily the most mobile or like the best rim runner. He was an effective low post scorer, but this year they got like a bigger, more athletic team, and I'm excited to kind of see like how his international experience, coaching the Australian national team comes in. So that's kind of been my takeaways. And it happened last year too. Doing something like this, you realize just how many good coaches there are in the country and how many of them are just cool dudes. Like, yeah, it shouldn't necessarily be shocking, but you got to be charismatic to be a D1 head coach. And even like some of these low major schools, you can kind of sense with some of these coaches, it's like, okay, I see how you made it. Like, I could see how you can command a room, even if, maybe some of them are waiting or striving to get a little more wins on the court, playing at under-resourced schools, however it might be. There's a lot of dudes just seem like good hangs.
Yeah, Connor, I think it's very easy to tell who gets it and who doesn't, right?
Yeah, and to that, I did the Big Sky last year. Steve Smiley is a huge fan of basketball, let alone just a great guy to talk to and a pretty solid coach. Like you can talk to him about pretty much anything basketball related. I'm doing a lot of the copy edit, so I'm only covering the Big West and UT Arlington. But no, it's been great, right? You get to talk to all the coaches, talking to KT Turner about what he's bringing to UT Arlington after. You go down the list of coaches he's coached under, Shaka Smart, obviously John Calipari, Larry Brown, the list goes on. Porter Moser, I think, is in there for KT Turner. So you get a different view into some of these guys, especially the new head coaches. Andy Newman over at CSUN and the culture he hopes to bring in to a program that has been lacking culture for upwards of half a decade. So I just appreciate what all of these coaches have to say about their team, but also about, college basketball as a whole. Got a whole lot of coaches, especially in the mid-major ranks, who are now, I don't want to say appreciative of NIL and the transfer portal, but appreciative of the fact that they can get freshmen that they've never had a shot at before, because these high major programs are going after the top mid-major transfers, and they can get the freshmen that maybe 4-star freshmen that would have gone to a high major program that are now going to some of these mid majors.
Hey, Connor, I just got to add, I don't appreciate the Mark Gottfried erasure with CSUN culture.
I do. I think it's apt. I think it's
Godfrey. Hey, anyone who could spank Coach K, anyone who could slap Coach K on the butt and lay it in handshake.
That didn't happen officially, right? That's one of the vacated wins.
Well, and the other thing with CSUN that you kind of have to remember, especially when it comes to Gottfried, is when I was speaking to Trent Johnson, the team he took over, he was lamenting the fact that in his first year, they didn't show up to practice. And I know it's not all Gottfried's guys, but that just shows the kind of culture that was there. Mm-hmm. And so I think Trent Johnson was behind the 8 ball, where I had a really tough spot he had to try and succeed in. But hopefully the offense that Andy Newman brings in, that's going to be really up-tempo. I mean, the previous spots that he was in, really up-tempo basketball. I think if he brings that to CSUN, even if they're not top of the Big West, which I don't think they will be, they're going to be a really fun team to watch, especially kind of even if they losing high-scoring battles with the likes of UC Santa Barbara, UC Irvine, etc.
Yeah, I have the MAC, Southland, and Sunbelt again this year. All those leagues are super, super fun. I had probably half the coaches in the Sunbelt unprompted tell me that the Sunbelt is the toughest one-bid league in the country, and that they truly believe that. And I got that a little bit last year from a couple of coaches, some of them who are no longer in the league, who I texted and still feel that way. Top half of the Sunbelt is really, really good. I came on here last year and talked a lot about how it didn't really matter who won the Sunbelt tournament. Whoever did had a chance to really win a game in the NCAA tournament. Louisiana obviously pushed Tennessee to the brink. I think that's going to be the case again this year. And there are a lot of good teams at the top of that league. Talking to Tobin Anderson was super, super fun. Guys like him who have had to completely turn around the entire Iona roster. And Rick Pitino's at Wake. The fact that they have one guy returning from last year's team was interesting to see how he went about that. Will Wade at McNeese too. Like, I kind of think McNeese is going to slide in there as like a 15 seed or a 16 seed in the tournament that could make some things interesting. He's got a lot of talent down there. I also talked to Brian Dutcher at San Diego State, and pick up the phone. First thing he says is, "We're going to be really good again this year." I was like, "All right, this is what I want. This is good." So we had some good talk there. We're find out a lot more in the Almanac. Again, you can pre-order it at cbbalmanac.com, or there are links on all of our Twitter pages. You can go find there as well. There's also a link up on heatcheckcbb.com. Now I'll get to some on-court action. There has been some. It's been all foreign tours related, and everybody will tell you that you should take foreign tours with a grain of salt because competition is not always the best. But this year there have been some notable games against actual competition. A couple teams playing the Bahamian national team in the Bahamas. Buddy Hield's made an appearance a couple times. Eric Gordon's made an appearance a couple times on these teams. In the age of the transfer portal, a lot of new faces in a lot of these teams, and so this is the first time we get to see them all on the court together. Riley, we can go anywhere around the country, but what's something that you've taken away from this stretch of foreign tour action?
Yeah, I'll say there are 3 freshman guards who I'm very excited to watch this upcoming year based on just 2 certain highlights that have leaked out. One, just looking at stat lines. I'll kind of start with the most obvious one. He's the number 1 player in the high school class by a lot of recruiting sites, and that's Isaiah Collier. Can't remember who they played. I want to say they're in Spain. Maybe not. There's so many teams in Spain. But his highlights, I'm not sure what his final stat line was, but just looked like he's as good as advertised. And for a recruiting class that's long been maligned as not that good, Collier looks ready to go. I didn't realize how big he was. Like, he's very built, like has a college ready frame. Doing all the stuff you want to see your point guard do, finishing through traffic around the rim, hitting live dribble passes off either hand. I'll be all in on him. And hopefully Bronny gets to join him at some point. I got my LeBron Lakers shirt on today. Prayers up for Bronny. But yeah, Collier, nothing really breaking there with expecting him to be good. But yeah, sort of looks like he's ready to buck that notion that this class is really weak. So that's the first. Second, Dre Gibbs Lawhorn. I know our cohorts over at Sleepers Media have been talking about him a lot. But I just got to give a shout out to DGL because he threw down a windmill dunk in one of these foreign tours. And if you can throw down a windmill dunk in the game, I don't care who it's against, I am intrigued. This kid was a top 10 recruit at one point in 2021 and somehow fell all the way down into like the 130s per 24/7. So he looks like a kid who's got crazy bounce, played at Word of God Academy. Flex to the left, throw some money out your hand. Shout out John Wall. But I'm excited to see what DGL does this year.
Troop 41 shout out. Very nice.
And last one, another hyphenated name, Deshaun Harris-Smith at Maryland. I am begging Maryland to leak some of the tapes, man. Release them. We want to see better Jamie Kaiser highlights. We want to see DHS highlights because both these dudes were putting up numbers on their foreign tour. And DHS was someone who I fell in love with just while watching some Peach Jam clips last year. Played for Team Takeover, and Team Takeover has quite a lot of success of putting out big-name college superstars, whether it's Armando Bacot, whether it's Justin Moore, whether it's Hunter Dickinson, Jameer Young, DHS's teammate at Maryland. Like that Team Takeover has a pretty good pedigree. So yeah, those are three freshman guards who I think will be plenty exciting, even if this class didn't get much fanfare.
You mentioned Hunter Dickinson. That my big takeaway so far is how he and KJ Adams have played together. Because once he committed to Kansas, there was a lot of question marks about how two not traditional bigs, and Hunter Dickinson obviously has range to the 3-point line, but two primarily low post players were going to get along playing together in an offense that already does not have much shooting. What I've seen so far has been encouraging to me. KJ Adams made a 3, which he did not make a 3 last year. He made a 3, which is good, and at least has shown the willingness to shoot it, which is a positive. We know Dickinson can step outside, but they're really working in the short roll action, particularly with KJ Adams. That was one thing he really excelled at last year, but having one in a short roll and one in the dunker spot. The amount of pick and roll into a lob to whoever's in that dunker spot has been intriguing and should be a pretty obvious way for how you're going to use those guys. But given KJ Adams' athleticism and the extra passing touch that he has shown, throwing those lobs to Dickinson down low, I don't have as many concerns about that pairing. The lack of shooting for Kansas still going to be an issue. But in terms of those two together, I think they can still both be very productive. Connor, what do you have?
I liked what I saw offensively outside of the turnovers from Iowa. Still have some concerns defensively because even though they won by 50 points, they gave up 77 to a team that, another school might have held to less. But they had 15 turnovers. I just think teams, like fans, are overreacting a little bit to on both directions, right? If a team loses to a really good squad and your team beats a poor squad, I think fans are comparing those two as equal games, especially on these foreign tours, because they don't understand the difference. But I think what Iowa showed offensively is that they're going to shoot the ball incredibly well. They have the size, I think, to compete in the Big Ten adequately. Now, obviously, they're not going to dominate because there are other teams with more dominant big men, but they're going to be adequate. But they need to clean up those turnovers, and they need to be better efficiency-wise, just making sure. Because if they ended every possession with a shot in that game, they're at 150, not 123. So there were good things to take away from that game. I just think that people are going to look at the final score and think that there's nothing wrong. And 21 turnovers, 13 in the first half. That's something that can't happen in the Big Ten. It can't happen in March. It can't really happen in the non-con either. So we'll see how good Iowa is. But I wouldn't overreact to that win just yet.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Iowa because I think that year in, year out, they're one of the more intriguing Big Ten teams. And that seems to sort of be this little resurgence that Fran has had, his tournament lack of success notwithstanding. But you kind of see it going back to, I want to say it was like the Peter Jock year in like 2016 when they got to number 1 in the country. Or maybe they had some big man if it wasn't Jock. I can't remember who the other one was. But yeah, they sort of faded, and I'm sure that doesn't help with the, February Fran jokes and everything. But really, since Luka Garza's been there the past 4 seasons, you can kind of pencil them into a top 20, top 15 offense every year. I mean, for the Garza years and the Keegan Murray year, they were like top 5 in the country. And I think with all the turnover that they have, it'll be really interesting to see if they can like keep that level of play. And even speaking of freshman guards, Connor, have you seen this kid they have named Brock Harding? He was like a 3-star kid, white point guard. But I talked about him on a Sleepers pod, and so many of their like Big Ten fan base was kind of like popping off in the comments about how good Brock Harding is. And I don't know what it is, man, about if it's Matt Painter or Fran McCaffrey to where they find these like unheralded 3-star recruits who end up being like decent contributors as a freshman. I'll just go ahead and say it. A lot of them end up being white, undersized guards, but that's they Iowa might have been able to do it again with Brock Harding. So,
and I think with Iowa too, especially offensively, right? The talent around him might not pop off the page, but it's good enough. And I think the best thing you can do for a freshman point guard is to give them talent around them. Even last year, where there was not a super heavy reliance, but like there was still a pretty heavy reliance on those freshman guards at Purdue. The fact that they had Zach Edey in the middle helped them. I mean, that can only
Right.
help them, right? And so St. Mary's, same thing. You had Aiden Mahaney, but you had guys like Logan Johnson, Kyle Bowen, Mitchell Saxon, Alex Dukas around him to the point where he could mess up and it wasn't the end of the world. So there wasn't that much pressure, which I think helped him not to mess up in some of these key situations where a freshman guard that feels like he has to be the star of the team, that doesn't have those backup options around him, or even in the case of Mahaney, primary options like Logan Johnson. I think that's not a good way to set up a freshman guard for success, freshman point guard specifically for success. And so the shooters that are around, Harding and the other point guards on this roster, I think help to ease them in as opposed to situations that you might have elsewhere, where if the shooting's not there, they don't have an elite big man. Those guards can sometimes struggle.
Yeah, speaking of the talent that surrounds him, I would say the infrastructure in place, that obviously matters a lot too. And I just looked it up. Iowa's had a top 5 offense the past 4 years, and you have to go all the way back to 2017 to see a time where they didn't rank in the top 20. And to put it in perspective, 2017 was Jordan Bohannon's freshman year. I know a lot of people probably think he was in school for forever. So it's been a long time. I mean, that's a more than enough of a time for a trend to form. Kind of like you hinted at with even on the foreign tour, they're not really guarding anybody. That could be a trend that probably continues. But yeah, I haven't done like necessarily like individualized rankings for any conference or anything, but it seems like, the offense might be good enough again just to on its own to keep Iowa in the top half of the Big Ten.
Well, and especially since the Big Ten is essentially Purdue, Michigan State, and then name your team here, right? It's Purdue and Michigan State are either 2 separate tiers or the same tier, depending on which Sleepers media person you ask. And then it's everybody else. So, I think that there's an opening for Iowa to be really good. But there are those issues that I pointed out that could be what sinks them.
Well, I think you need the defensive issues. Go ahead, Riley.
I was just gonna say that's more than enough time on Iowa, more time than I anticipated talking to them at all. If you want to say your piece on the defense, Ralph, and then we can get into this
No, I was
All-American
going to
draft.
say I think those defensive issues need to get worked out if they're going to make the second weekend for the first time in Fran McCaffrey's career.
Look, just if you're an Iowa fan, just vibe it out. Get 23 wins a year. Enjoy hanging out in your cornfields. Enjoy, going out to Des Moines. Like, I've heard Des Moines is a pretty cool city. Like, just vibe and be happy that you at least get to see a team in the spring that knows how to score points, because you don't do that under Kirk Ferentz.
Have you? Oh, so this is fun. Have you heard about the contract, or what was added to their offensive coordinator's contract?
No. What
so
was
the
it?
offensive coordinator is Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz's son.
Love some
He's been the
nepotism.
offensive coordinator for a couple of years. Last year was awful. They put a clause in his contract this year that they have to average 25 points per game or he's going to get fired.
Oh, he's getting fired. I feel.
Let's draft some players. Let's move on. Enough Iowa talk. Heat-Check Hangout's only place where we can lead with Big Sky talk and then decide we've talked too much about Iowa. Let's go ahead and draft some All-Americans. Said at the top of the show, but the way this will work, each of us will draft 6 players. At least one of them has to come from a mid-major school. FAU does count. St. Mary's does count. I'm not going to count Gonzaga. I'll throw Dayton in there as well, but Deron Holmes can check that box off too if anybody wants to take him on their All-American team. We will go snake style. I have not picked a draft order because I'm going to do a random number generator just like we did last time for the Final Four draft. And I know last time people thought I may have rigged it, considering that I ended up with the first pick, which was not the direct cause of me winning the Final Four draft for the second consecutive year, but it also didn't hurt. All right, so first number 3. Riley, you are third on my screen, so I'll let you get first pick. Connor, next is number 2, so you can go second, then I will go last, and we'll just snake back and forth.
Let's get into it. All right, Zach Edey. I mean, do I need to preface it? Like, I want to be bold and take Donovan Clingan or something. I know he's not going to make it back to me, so I'll spoil that, but I'll just take the safest pick and go Edey. He's good.
Yeah. Reigning National Player of the Year, nothing more needs to be said. Connor, how are you following that up?
So I'm picking between 3 players. I also thought Clingan, but my concerns with Clingan are the same concerns that everyone had with Edey last year. And so I don't want to take that risk in the first round, which is I don't know if Clingan plays more than 25 minutes per game, right? Because that's a struggle that he could have, right? He was probably the most talented player on that UConn team last year, if not second most talented behind Hawkins. He was behind Sanogo, but he also didn't play. He has never played that amount of minutes at the college level. So I'm between 2 Duke players. And the injuries to Filipowski have me concerned. So I am going with the Aussie, and I am going with Tyrese Proctor.
You son of a bitch.
Hey, I always say when you can take a player who averaged 9 points per game and shot 38% from the field at number 2, you got to do it. So bravo, Connor.
If Zach Edey does not win National Player of the Year again, it's going to be Tyrese Proctor.
Dude, Tyrese Proctor's good.
Proctor is insane.
He is scary, but he's not. There's a chance that it doesn't all get put together.
For me, it's not if it gets put together or not. It's there's so much talent on this Duke roster that does he get the opportunities that Zach Edey gets in order to showcase that at the level Zach Edey does. But I do think that a Duke player is going to be first team All-American. It's going to be Filipowski or Proctor, and I trust it to be Proctor more than Filipowski, given we don't know what Filipowski's health is going to be at the start of the season. And I just think Proctor's the better talent.
Here's the thing with Proctor. He put it together at the end of last season. Like, he went through those struggles that you see freshmen who reclassify as skip their senior season in high school go through. And he gradually got better throughout the season. I have a piece that's up on heatchecksbb.com right now about that growth and how at the end of the year, nobody was better out of ball screens. Yeah. Like, he grew into being a point guard, and he just murdered people out of ball screens with his touch, ability to make shots off the bounce, attack the rim. He showed incredible vision down the stretch in March. He had a couple passes where I was just like, I didn't see that, and I saw the whole thing happen on TV. Like, he's my favorite player in the country this year. I think he has a real chance, again, to win National Player of the Year and be a top 5 pick in the draft. Okay, the UNC fan has left. Sorry, we're not talking about RJ Davis.
favorite player this year was a bridge too far. I'll add, like,
No.
Tyrese Proctor was the scariest Duke freshman guard I've seen last year since Tyus Jones. And Tyus Jones is like an all-time, like, least favorite Duke player for me. That man, like, murdered UNC my senior year there. I'll never forget it. It sucked. And won a national title. Miserable. But like, Proctor at the end of the year was cooking dudes. I'll give him that. Like, if this gets clipped, I don't want this to just be me making fun of Tyrese Proctor, but I at least had to point out that he still shot 38% from the field for a full season.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, the sophomore leap is real. And I see a lot of what you're talking about, Ralph, with the vision and everything. And even beyond that, the ways that he got to his spots and would just, like, he could get wherever he wanted to on the court and was just beating his defenders, hitting insane little, like, turnaround jumpers, even if those aren't, necessarily the most efficient shots, like, they go in. Like, Proctor's really good. I just want to take him 2 overall.
I will say there was a lot of hype about Proctor last offseason going into the year, where people were calling him Duke's best player that had seen him in practice. And he was, like, throwing the ball to the other team. Like, it was very clear that he was not ready for the college game. And I was kind of down on him, but as the year went on, especially towards the end of the year, I think he's got it. I think he's it. Like, I like this pick, and I really thought he was going to fall to me, because I think if somebody other than Zach Edey wins National Player of the Year, I think it's Tyrese Proctor. Well, since Donovan Clingan fell to me, I'm going to take Donovan Clingan. I mean, we've kind of covered that already. He was extremely effective. The only reason he did not start was because he played behind the Final Four most outstanding player. He is one of those guys who, kind of like Edey 2 years ago, was in a minor role or an off the bench role because of who was ahead of him, but it was very clear his ability, very clear he could step into that and handle it. I have no qualms about him playing big minutes. His body type seems fine. He didn't have any issues with injuries or anything last year, so I'm good with that. I'm good with him being there for me, having that breakout season. Since I got the first pick of the next round, I'm going to stay in the Big East, and I'm going to take another big man, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Just how important he is to Creighton. When he had mono last year, that was when Creighton stunk. And then he came back, and Creighton was all of a sudden a very good team again, made the Elite Eight. I think have a real chance to make the Final Four this year. He is a big part of that, a huge part of what they do on both ends of the court. He's as steady as they come to me. So I'll balance my breakout candidate, I guess my second breakout candidate behind Proctor, with that. So my 2 picks, I'm going to take Clingan and Kalkbrenner and shore up my front court.
So I was between, I need a big man. I think there's 2 big men left. I'm going to take the one that I think is more of a sure thing. So I'm going to go Hunter Dickinson. I think Kansas is going to be top 5, top 10 at the worst. Dickinson is the top offensive option in Lawrence. And, I would have taken the 3 bigs that were picked before I would have taken Dickinson. But if Dickinson is my big man after taking Tyrese Proctor in the first round, I'm happy with that pick.
We know what Hunter Dickinson is. We know he's awesome. We know how good we know how good Bill Self is with big men. Like, to me, this makes too much sense. I already talked about potential issues with spacing, and I'm not as concerned about that. He's going to be productive. Kansas is going to be very, very good. Good pick.
Yep. Gosh, I still don't want to take Filipowski out of principle. I would understand if someone in my position did, but I'm drafting with my heart and taking my guy, Armando. I got to get Mondo here. I think
it's not a bad spot for Armando.
I mean, he's going to put up numbers. I know I've on this program, I've voiced some skepticism with UNC. I think after last year, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think they have a lot to prove. I'm not ready to fully say like, oh, it's going to be a bounce back year. I want to see it in the non-conference, specifically in Battle for Atlantis. It's been a long time since UNC has won one of those MTEs. I'm not positive. I'm pretty sure it's been since 2017. Speaking of Jordan Bohannon's freshman year, the year that UNC also won the national championship, they won Maui. But yeah, I want to see them prove it in the non-con, but I think so I did a little Twitter clip of, the difference in UNC's ball screen defense this past year compared to NCAA tournament in 2022 when they made the title game and got really aggressive on that end with how they hedged, with how they iced. And rewatching the UNC UCLA game, Armando looked very mobile, very light on his feet, like he was running the floor, shining as a roller. He got switched on to Tyger Campbell a couple times and held his own more than admirably. Like he kind of locked up Tyger Campbell on a couple of possessions. And I don't think we saw that at all from Armando last year. And I would attribute that mainly to the ankle injury he suffered in the national title game, or it was the Final Four game against Duke. I don't think he ever fully recovered that. But just seeing some of the clips that UNC's put out this year, he looks a lot slimmer than he did last year, which would yield itself to some of that mobility that we saw in 2022. So even if I'm not all the way in yet on a bounce back year from Carolina, I'm definitely in on a bounce back year from Armando.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Again, another guy who's been doing this for a while. We know what to expect from him. Unlike Dickinson, he's with the same team, same role. There should be more shots to go around without Caleb Love in the fold. So he's in for a big year.
Yeah. Next pick could go Filipowski, could go Tyler Kolek, but I'm gonna get a Spartan dog and take Tyson Walker.
Damn it!
I've been picking Michigan State like preseason top 3 all off season, so I got to go fully in on it and go Tyson Walker. I love that he's just a shot maker. I love that he's gritty. I love how well he played in the NCAA tournament last year. He's also super old. That dude's probably 23, 24 years old. I don't think Michigan State fans expected to get him for a third year at all. So it's kind of going to be his show, even with AJ Hoggard. I think he'll still get plenty of minutes like on ball, but Walker's really good off ball too. So let me get Tyson Walker.
Oh, Connor, that's who you wanted.
He's the best guard and arguably the best backcourt in the country for a team that should be, again, like Kansas, top 5, top 10 at the worst. It is, Brian. It's arguably, and I wouldn't argue it. I think there are better ones, but you could make an argument that Walker and Hoggard is the best backcourt.
You could make an argument if you wanted to. You might be wrong.
I mean, if you think Michigan State is a top 5, top 10 team, it's not because of that front court.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. Well, Connor, it is you. So since you can't take Tyson Walker, who are you taking?
I mean, I could take Filipowski. I could take Kolek. Naismith is still on the board. I'm gonna take Naismith.
Okay.
I think Kolek's going to be really good for a pretty good Marquette team. Filipowski, I don't want 2 Duke players. Naismith, he's just a pure scorer. And when we're talking about All-American teams and stuff like that, I mean, scoring is the premium statistic that you use to determine who is on that team for the most part. I think this team at Texas is going to be pretty good offensively. Naismith doesn't have to be the playmaker anymore. He can just be the primary scorer because they've got Tyrese Hunter and some others there that can help play make for Naismith. He's also not going to be the primary. He might be the primary scout, but he's not going to be the only scout that other teams have to have on defense to account for, like he was last year for Oral Roberts. So I'm going to go with Naismith. I think he's going to be really good for this Texas team. And I just don't know if Kolek's going to be the scorer that he needs to be. And if Filipowski, I don't want two Duke players again. So at least not this early.
Yeah, A. Smith, if you did not take him, was going to be one of my 2 picks here at the turn. It's a good pick. He is, a bona fide college basketball scorer, certainly accomplished in that, going to play probably the lead role on what should be a good Texas team. He's going to make one of the 3. It should everything go according to plan, and Texas is as good as we think Texas will be. I'll take Filipowski then. This is too good a value to get him at the end of the 3rd round to not take him. I am concerned about the hip surgeries, but he's too skilled. He's too big. There are going to be so many options in that system that he's going to get, I think, softer coverage than he got last year too. And he can just do so many things offensively that he, at this point, is good value for his skill, even if the injuries limit him a little bit, particularly at the start of the season. So there's my
really good defender too. Yeah, really good defender.
Yeah,
I think
he doesn't get enough credit for that.
He actually led Duke in defensive box plus minus and defensive win shares last year, not Derek Lively. Like, he's really mobile. Anytime he got put in ball screens, the teams couldn't really expose that. Hopefully, I want him to be healthy as much as I hate Duke. Like, I never will wish ill on him personally. Hopefully that the hip issues don't hinder his mobility on the court, because he was, just far exceeded anybody's expectations defensively too.
I have 3 7-footers on my team, so I need to go with the backcourt. And I am not going to overthink this too much because Tyler Kolek is still on the board, and he might be the best returning guard in college basketball. He is college basketball's version of Steve Nash. He does not score as much as you would like for the best returning guard in college basketball. Again, Tyrese Proctor is off the board. I would take Proctor over Kolek. But what he showed last year, the way he runs the Marquette team, his passing, what he can add with steals on the defensive end, makes too much sense. Again, too good of value here to pass up, particularly as I'm looking for a guard on my team of 7-footers. Give me Kolek, round out my roster with, at least right now, I have Kolek, Filipowski, Kalkbrenner, and Klingon. I just like Big East guys.
No, I think Kolek's the right pick there. I mean, I might have stretched for A. Smith over Kolek, but I mean it's A. Smith, Kolek, Walker, as like those 3 guards that kind of have to go in somewhere
behind Tyrese Proctor.
Behind Proctor. I am going to round out my front court. I'm also going to take my mid-major player. I am going because we joked about FAU. I think FAU has too much balance. I'm going to take Deron Holmes from Dayton.
Okay.
I'm going to take an 18-8 guy who 2.5 blocks per game. 2 years ago, I know his block totals dropped last year to just under 2, right? Like just under 2 is a drop for him. I think he's going to be one of the best. He's probably he's the best mid-major big in the country. And I think he's going to turn a lot of heads in the A-10 this year. And again, I would love to take a guy like John L. Davis or someone else, but I want to stay. I don't want to roll the dice and pick the wrong FAU player because I know there's probably 2 you could pick. So I'm going to go with Deron Holmes.
Okay. I like that pick a lot, even if it's taking the mid-major guy early. I feel like Holmes, he's such a freak athletically too, especially in that league. But yeah, I'll stay in the front court, stay giving the big men some love, and I'm going to pick Umar Ballo. I think without Azuolas Tubelis there, it's going to kind of be his show in the front court. I love Keshad Johnson as a defender. I love his switchability. I think that'll hopefully give Arizona some more flexibility, particularly in the postseason, having a guy like him who's been there, who can guard almost any position. But yeah, just looking at the numbers that Ballo put up, even as kind of the second fiddle to Bellis, and even looking at Tommy Lloyd's history, he coached for years and years and years under a guy who knows how to feature big men. So let me get Ballo with my next pick.
Okay. I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all.
I don't either. I worry about the Caleb Love effect on Ballo. but because I don't think Ballo is as talented as Baycott to the point where the Caleb Love effect doesn't affect him, right? But he showed out. I mean, even the past 2 years, but he showed out last year when he was thrust into that bigger role. And especially given the offense that Arizona plays, right? There's so many points to go around that, even if Caleb Love takes 15, 16 shots a game, there's plenty of opportunities for the other players on the roster. And I think Ballo's probably that second option and the first option in the front court.
And I think that like having Jaden Bradley there as a pass first guy, as probably a less erratic version of Kerr Kriisa, sort of can offset the Caleb Love effect a little bit, because with UNC these past 2 seasons, RJ Davis is another player who's more efficient than Love, but he also is score first. He's wired to get buckets. That's why I think, going back to my Mondo pick, Elliot Cadeau is such a vital piece with his vision and everything. But yeah, I think Jaden Bradley, I'm already envisioning plenty of like lobs to Ballo from half court, courtesy of Bradley running the point. Next pick, I'm going to go a little bit bold. I don't know if it's just because I've been talking to Jim Root too much, but I'm going to take Tyler Perry. Just going off of the Marquise Noel numbers. Let me get another undersized guard who, I still can't believe Tyler Perry averaged like 18 points for a team that scored like 45 points a game at North Texas. Like the fact that he put up those numbers in that system in a league in Conference USA that was really good last year. I feel like it's a little bit risky anytime you take an up transfer, especially when they're my height, but I like the blueprint that was laid through Marquise Noel, and this, maybe y'all wouldn't have taken him, but I was worried about him making it back to me, so I'm taking Tyler Perry.
Not a bad pick. He's going to Kansas State to play the Marquise Noel role, and he already kind of did somewhat at North Texas. There's a very good possibility he has a great year. Very good possibility he has a great year.
I also just realized that was my last non-mid-major pick, and there's actually another guard I like better than Tyler Perry, who I thought could make it back to me, but I won't get to take him. So, I digress.
You still can. You don't have to only have one mid-major. You can have 2.
Oh, but
Tyler Perry's Kansas State. I'm the only one who's picked a mid-major, Brian.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
The other guard I was thinking of is not a mid-major.
Got it. Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
Draft
if
card's
I'm
already been
pick that
submitted.
card.
Sorry, Riley.
I know. Buyers and sellers.
I'm trying to choose either. I need a guard, and I'm trying to choose between 3. I don't know what that backcourt's going to look like at Creighton. Otherwise, I'd pick Trey Alexander, but you've got Stephen Ashworth who can score from any level. Baylor Shireman is going to take shots. So I'm between 2. I can roll the dice with the guy I think is the better talent, or I could stay safe with the guy who I know what he's going to give me. And I think, given who I have, I think I'm going to roll the dice. So I'm going to maybe not buy into where people think they'll finish, but I'm going to buy into the talent of a fully healthy Justin Moore. And I'm going to take him with my 5th pick. I think if he's fully healthy and you get even a modicum of like adequate coaching from Kyle Neptune, Justin Moore is going to have a massive year this year for Villanova.
I am angry. You've now taken both of the cards I wanted to take with Justin Moore and Tyrese Proctor. He was good coming back from a really serious Achilles injury last year. Now he's more healthy, going to have the featured role. I think it's hard for a guy as experienced as him and as successful as he's been to have like a real breakout season. But I think he's going to go back to being what we thought he would have been last year had he not been hurt. Right, where somebody who can average 15 to 20 a game without really breaking a sweat. Like, to me, that's what Justin Moore can do.
Yeah, and I know you can argue whether we're in or out on Kyle Neptune, but sometimes talent just shines through. And there might be a case where Kyle Neptune is awful, and that only increases the case for Justin Moore to try and just be the guy on this Villanova squad. I don't think he's going to be an empty stats guy, but either way, I think Moore is going to do extremely well this year.
Yeah. Well, you make me have to pivot, and I don't know if this is where you're going to go with your last pick, but it feels disingenuous that there is a Nemhard guard for Gonzaga that has not been taken yet.
That was not where I was going to go with my last pick, but I like the pick.
I have to
like
do
it too.
I am a
Good
sucker
pick,
for
Brian.
Nemhards, particularly in Mark Few's system. It's just it's what basketball should be. He knows how to run that system. It's going to get the most out of him. I know transfer there from Creighton, but it fits his style so perfectly. The pace he plays at, his passing, what he can do from a scoring standpoint. I am a little bit concerned. I don't know if Gonzaga's other options around him are as good as they've been the last couple of years, or as good as Gonzaga fans hope and expect them to be. But I do think Ryan Nemhard is going to have an excellent season. That system is perfect for him. Gonzaga is going to do well. A Gonzaga player will probably make an All-American team. He's my favorite Gonzaga player on this team. I think he's the best one. So go ahead and give me Ryan Nemhard. That does not count as my mid-major player because we are not counting Gonzaga as that. So I'm going to go to the mid-major ranks. Kind of mid-major. They had a team play in the national championship game last year in the Mountain West. There's a player in the Mountain West who has been on the Cousy Award finalist list each of the last 2 years. He is the second leading returner in terms of assist rate in the country, other than Tyler Kolek. It's than him. I like guys who pass. But this guy also averaged 18 points a game. If you want to know what he can do, just look at a January night where he single-handedly beat UNLV on the road while almost recording a triple-double with 30 points. Isaiah Stevens is slept on at this point. He got a lot of love 2 years ago, as he should have, as Colorado State was making their run with David Roddy. He was hurt to start last year. Took some time to kind of shake the cobwebs off, but he was awesome last year on a Colorado State team that was rebuilding a little bit. So there wasn't as much attention on him, but he's back for his 5th year. He is, I think, more skilled than some of the guards that we've taken already in this draft. I would have taken him earlier, but I knew I could probably get him here. He is somebody who is going to put up eye-popping numbers. He's going to have the ball in his hands every single possession for Colorado State. And if he does not, then there was something wrong with that possession. He's going to have great numbers. His team has the potential to compete for an NCAA tournament bid. If that happens, it's going to be because he plays incredibly well, which is going to put him in the All-American mix. Give me Isaiah Stevens.
I like it. I think that might force Riley into a tougher decision than if you didn't take Stevens. Because I think there are three legitimate options really for his mid-major pick at the end of this draft. But I like Stevens is a stud.
It's going to be weird if we joked about everybody taking an FAU player and nobody takes an FAU player.
I mean, it's an FAU player, Mahaney, unless Riley goes way off the board.
It'll be one of those two.
Him.
That's why I don't like. I don't know. I mean, Isaiah Stevens is obviously really good. I just don't think Colorado State will be good enough to get a guy on an All-American team.
They will. They will.
That actually helps me, Brian, because I'm not going to take one of those two because I already have my mid-major player, and I don't really know if I want to take either of those two guys. I, for just a second, considered, what would happen with Caleb Love in an offense that puts up 95 points a night. But I'm not going to. I'm going to go with the floor guy that I wanted to possibly take in the last round instead of Justin Moore, the guy who was an honorable mention All-American last year. I think he's one of the most slept-on players still in the country right now because, again, we know what his team's going to be. His team's going to be 20 to 30, just a really solid guard. I'm going to go with Wade Taylor the fourth at Texas A&M. I think, he's just a very stable guard. Again, you know what he's going to give you, and what he's going to give you if that's the floor. I mean, that's honorable mention All-American, right? And it can only go up from there. I think I went in the right order, going more for it first, obviously. But I like the Wade Taylor pick. I would have taken him in the last round if more had been taken. So.
Yeah, I mean, I love Wade Taylor's game. I love how physical he plays, and I think he's got a good team around him with Tyrese Radford, Henry Coleman, Julius Marble, to where it's a team that's good enough. I mean, I think they're good enough to win the SEC. Wouldn't say they're the favorite necessarily, but things can break right for them, and they could do so. And if that's the case, if A&M is a top 15 team all year, and Wade Taylor puts up remotely close to the same numbers he did last year, I can't envision him not making an All-American team. So. Good pick by you, Connor. For me, that one guard who I really wanted to take, and I realized that I missed a chance to, was Trey Alexander. I know you gave him a shout out earlier, Connor, but I mean, I think he is going to be the alpha in that backcourt. I think he's a good defender, and he's had big postseason moments as well. Just put up 31 points and 11 boards in Creighton's foreign tour earlier this week. His nickname is also Tricky Trey, which I love a good nickname. That's his Twitter handle. I love a good Twitter handle. Shout out Tricky Trey. I wish I could have picked you with my last pick. But I'm going to go with John L. Davis. It's really close between him and Aiden Mahaney. I think it's impossible to not think about how good Mahaney was in that Gonzaga game, to be like, oh, maybe he can do this more regularly this year. But ultimately, I think FAU is going to be probably a top 15-ish team all season, and it would be not surprising at all if they're in the top 5 at some point. And let's say even if they go like 27-5 this year, if they don't have the same, flashy record as last year, that kind of, with the notoriety they have and with John L. Davis's numbers, and they probably aren't going to be anything more than like 14, 15 points a game. But I think he has the name cachet. I think FAU is going to be good enough to get that attention, and more so than a West Coast team that plays at a really slow tempo that a lot of the voters are probably sleeping when they play anyway. So nothing against Mahaney. I love his game, and I'm excited to watch him this year. But I think John L. Davis has a slightly better chance at making an All-American team.
Spotlight's going to be on FAU too, right? And if they do well, they're going to have a token representative on a team. It might be him, might be Elijah Martin, might be somebody else. But if FAU lives up to expectations, they will get at least one player on an All-American team. So that's a solid pick.
Yeah, and I think people are expecting, with the departure of Logan Johnson, that Mahaney is going to take that step forward, which he probably is. But they've still got Alex Dukas, they've still got Saxon, they've got this 4-star kid Jordan Ross who has some pedigree to him, that I think could be a good second option in the backcourt to Mahaney. I've heard really good things about Mark Ulionis taking that next step. So St. Mary's has also always been, with the exception of Adela Vedova here and some other options there, Patty Mills, they've always been kind of that we're going to win by committee type of offense. They also play really slow. And so playing really slow, if Mahaney would put up 21 points in a Gonzaga uniform, he's only going to put up 15 in a St. Mary's uniform. So I like the John L. Davis pick. You could have gone with Martin too, but I'm big on John L. Davis. So I like that pick.
Make sure you give us your thoughts on who we snubbed, who we should have picked, maybe who won the draft. Let us know on the Hangout CDB. Let's run back through. All
right. So Riley's picks, Zach Edey, Armando Bacot, Tyson Walker, Umar Ballo, Tyler Perry, John L. Davis. My picks were Tyrese Proctor, Hunter Dickinson, Max Naismith, Deron Holmes, Justin Moore, and Wade Taylor. And Brian's picks were Donovan Clingan, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Kyle Filipowski, Tyler Kolek, Ryan Nemhard, and Isaiah Stevens.
Can I pick Connor's team?
I actually
can't.
I'm a big fan of Ralph's team. I think Ralph getting Filipowski, you kind of preyed on like my Duke bias. This is
You
what
guys
happens
let
in all.
Filipowski and Kolick fall. Like I could not take them where I took them.
Like,
That's on
I
YouTube.
think you did a really good job, Brian, of picking 3 dominant big men and 3 really good playmakers.
Mhm.
I am hesitant to say you're going to get a lot of scoring out of their backcourt.
Isaiah Stevens will drop 30. It's fine. That's all we need. That's all we need.
For a team, if he drops 30 in games, I mean, Colorado State's either elite or they're going to be, floundering too far out in the middle of the Mountain
He's
West.
done it in the past in both scenarios. Where Colorado State's been good and where they haven't. So we'll might get a little bit of both.
But yeah, and I think, obviously, in my opinion, Riley has the best big guard combo between Zach Edey and Tyson Walker. A lot of that has to do with Zach Edey, but so we'll see. I like all 3 teams. I think there were definitely Trey Alexander's probably the first name you can pick up that was a pretty big snub. You could argue, again, Houston is in the same, like LJ Cryer in Houston's in the same boat, I think, as Mahaney at St. Mary's, which is just, are they going to be good enough? Are they going to be fast enough? Are they going to get enough opportunities? Are they going to be dominant enough? And then the one, if Collier or Boogie Ellis were not at USC, I might have picked one of them, but because they're both at USC, I didn't know who to pick. I think one of them is a real All-American candidate. I just don't know who it is.
Yeah. Collier was in the mix for me. I ended up going with Nembhard because I think Gonzaga and that system are more sure bets. But I think he's one we may look back on and been like, we should have picked him, obviously.
Yeah, it's going to be him. And I think the only other one that I think his issue is if he puts up an All-American type season, I don't think his team's going to be very good, which I think actually might be the case. But TJ Shannon, is in that weird position where he could be the point guard for Illinois and put up really good numbers.
I think we also know what TJ Shannon is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's good. I don't know if he's great.
Yeah, I struggle seeing Illinois being good enough to get an All-American. I don't know. Again, if my boy Gibbs Lawhorn is just a stud right away and there's minimal drama, then that spot to be the 3rd best team in the Big Ten is that path is pretty clear, but I don't know how likely that is.
You're counting on Illinois, Coleman Hawkins, TJ Shannon, and Brad Underwood to have minimal drama.
But yeah, I think we went with as close to the right 18 as we could. Obviously Mahaney, Trey Alexander, Cryer. You could argue for any of them.
Cryer is a good shout.
And like I said, I think there's a really good chance that. I won't say there's a really good chance. There is the best possible opportunity for Caleb Love to cash in on his promise from their Final Four run in an offense like Arizona's. I do like the Umar Ballo pick, but I just think Arizona plays so up tempo and so at the rim, get at the rim in transition, that Caleb Love, if he buys into that, could win. If Caleb Love stops and pulls up for threes in transition, he's going to ride the bench. That's why I didn't pick him. But
I just think, Caleb is he wasn't good in transition in his UNC career is the thing. I can't remember if it was, I feel like I've said this on one of our pods before. There were multiple times last year where we would have 3-on-1, 3-on-2 fast break opportunities and he would turn the ball over. He's historically been really bad at getting to the rim, and that was even in, maybe not really bad, but he's historically been bad at getting to the rim or finishing at the rim, and that was even in a season in 2022 when we had a top 2 or 3 shooter in the country in the front court and Brady Manick. So I don't know. Maybe I think Tommy Lloyd has shown the past 2 seasons, he can get the most out of guards, and he can scheme offenses that are really efficient and high octane and powerful. So maybe he can sort of tap into something there. That wouldn't surprise me. But I kind of had the same thought initially when Caleb Love committed to Arizona. I was like, this is a great fit. And don't get me wrong, I want the best for Caleb Love. I'm still grateful for Caleb Love. He's still a Tar Heel in my book. This is not out of sour grapes or out of hatred or spite or anything. But I'm a little bit skeptical of him going into his senior year and just now being able to figure it out and sort of improve in some of these areas where he's struggled the past 3 years.
I think
and
there's
if you
a
ask
difference.
Dick Vitale, we snubbed 6 players, so.
I think there's a difference with Caleb Love, not to belabor this at the end of this podcast here. There's a difference between a style that fits Caleb Love's skill set and a style that fits the way Caleb Love plays. Because Arizona's system fits Caleb Love's skill set to a T, I think, where he's a big, strong, quick guard who can get downhill. And Tommy Lloyd excels with those kind of guards that gets him out in transition, makes them tough to defend that way. Like, that's perfect. But as you mentioned, Riley, Caleb Love sees that, wants to back it back out, and then hit a tough contested 3. I do think that Arizona has enough depth in the backcourt to where if he pulls enough of that, Tommy Lloyd can bench him and Arizona can still be very good. So I don't think Hubert Davis had that ability, especially last year with UNC. So I'm curious to see if that, plus being on a second school, and maybe being with better coach, we'll see what kind of happens, changes Caleb Love at all and gets more out of him on a more consistent basis. But that, Arizona is going to be incredibly intriguing to watch this year for many reasons. That's first and foremost of them to me, because I do see a scenario where he is freaking awesome, but he's got to change a lot of things. Make sure you let us know who you think won at the Hangout CBB on the artist formerly known as Twitter. RIP Twitter. We love X. Yay. Make sure you let us know. Tell us who we snubbed. Tell us who won. Tell us who lost. We can take the insults, so then we can quote tweet them back at you in March when you inevitably are wrong and we are right. Make sure you also pre-order the Almanac. You get 20% off on that, cbbalmanac.com. If you're a college basketball fan, you need the Almanac. Anything you could possibly want to know on any of the 362 teams in the country is going to be in that thing. Was last year. We anticipate will be again. For our co-host Connor Hope and Riley Davis, I am Brian Ralph. Thank you all very, very much for listening. We thought we might, go shorter today, and we still hit an hour and 3 minutes because that's what we do. We'll talk to you again next time.
Basketball, college. Basketball, college. Oh, is that time already? Whoa, basketball, college. Come on. Basketball, college. Oh. Basketball, college. Whoa, basketball, college.